All right, guys, today got a very important topic, especially surrounding the Bruins. Our team that we root for, Jeremy Swayman, is currently not under contract, and that's a major problem with the season less than a week away. It's already been stated that Corpusalo is going to start game one of the season for the Bees, and right now, contract negotiations are not going well with Jeremy Swayman's team. This is an absolute problem for the Bruins. Swayman has definitely been their anchor for quite some time. You know, he's shown up in the playoffs. You go ahead and you get rid of your tandem and get rid of Allmark, expecting Swayman to finally have won the job and play 75 to 80% of the games. And now you can't even sign him. That's a big problem for the Bees, who are going to have a much different looking team this year and something that needs to get fixed. Once again, if this isn't fixed by December 1st, that's the deadline. Jeremy Swayman is no longer a Boston Bruin. So, yes, this is a major concern right now for the Bruins fans and in the NHL world right now. There's a lot of suspicion going on and a lot to talk about. So, we're going to break that down today for you guys.
Yeah, so I'm just going to weigh in with my opinion right now on this situation. So, to kind of back it up a little bit, you have two of the best goalies, technically, based off of stats from the last two seasons, in Allmark and Swayman. Obviously, Swayman's the younger player. Everyone kind of thinks that or thought that he's going to be the guy. He's going to pass Allmark. Obviously, in 2022 to 23, Allmark was kind of the starter, even though they were still splitting. Then it was kind of roles reverse this year or this past year, I should say. Swayman started most of the time, and then obviously we get to the playoffs, and he's the starter in the playoffs. So Swayman does get a little bit more, I guess, of the starter. But here's what I just want to say is Swayman really hasn't shown much outside of the time he split with Allmark. Obviously, when you're going to split with the goalie, your numbers aren't going to be as bad. And I'm not saying that Swayman's bad at all because I think he's really good. But without Allmark, what do his numbers look like? Do they look as good as they have been when he plays with Allmark these last 2 years and even the years before that? Because I think he also played at the back end of Tuukka's career too when he was coming up. So he's always had somewhat of a good goalie kind of with him. So can he really be the 1A guy? Are you going to pay him? Because obviously, recently the news came out that, Neely says 64 million. So obviously 8 years times 8 million annually. Obviously, the report comes out after that he wants at least 8.5. My response to that is, are you worth more than that, if that? Because obviously, if he wants more than 8.5, he might be talking closer to 9. But you haven't won a Stanley Cup yet. Okay. For him, you know, since he's become the guy, you haven't made it past the second round, and you got whooped by Florida in the second round, and got upset by the Panthers in the year before that. Obviously, Allmark played more of the games there. You haven't won a Stanley Cup. You haven't won a Vezina. So you don't have the hardware, the accolades yet to prove that you can kind of reset this goalie market where it is. And by the way, if he takes the 8 times 8, he'd be in the top six highest paid goalies in the league. So it's not like we're lowballing him. Obviously, there was the lowball rumor that came out, obviously, of like the 6.5, which is a low ball, and that's pretty ridiculous. But he also can't be asking for this crazy money because, to be honest with you, he's not Igor Shesterkin. He makes a little bit more, and if he thinks that he's going to reset the market, like he's not better than him, and you're in the Eastern Conference with him.
I agree with that, but also, like, you talk about, oh, he hasn't won any cups and he hasn't gone far in the playoffs. Like, other than last year, Igor really hasn't done that either. And I would argue that the Rangers, at least up front, offensively, have a better team, at least from what we saw, especially in the playoffs last year, than the Bruins. So I think that, this is even crazy numbers for Igor Shesterkin to be asking for. And, that's down the line. Clearly, Swayman and his agent are trying to make a statement here. Clearly, he's an important part of the Bruins and someone that they need. So the fact that they get rid of Olmark, who has won a Vezina, who has proven that he has gotten a lot better and easily could be the starting goalie for the Bruins, I understand them letting him go. They don't have the money for both of them, and Olmark would have to get paid at some point. Swayman here, I think that it's his agent using this as leverage because they got rid of Olmark and understanding that this is business and this is what happens in the league. The agent is just trying to do his job. He's not, a Bruins fan. He has no ties to the team. It's not his job to make sure that players that he represents, that team is successful in the best possible way. Right now, I don't blame Swayman or his agent at all. That's just him doing his job. And I think it's just the Bruins management screwing up. It's 100% on them. They've just dug themselves into a hole. And at this point, you just got to throw the bag at them. And it all comes back to, you bring in Nikita Zadorov and Elias Lindholm, and those are great. And Boston's excited about them, and they get you more depth, both offensively and defensively. But you pay them a little bit too much because you locked them up for a while, and they definitely have a lot to prove. And they're not the youngest guys. Definitely not the youngest guys. And you have other people that you need to take care of. Obviously, Marshy, he's going like the Bergeron route, taking pay cuts. He's a true Boston guy, fan favorite. Even Pasta, he's making the money he deserves, but he has made it clear he wants to be here. He wants to win here. But I mean, you can't just move on to another goalie. There's not going to be another goalie that can just come in and play like Jeremy Swayman. I mean, this is a team that has won, I believe, the most amount of games the last 2 seasons out of the whole entire NHL. And this is a team that, you talk about overtime and getting the extra time. Those points are so crucial. The Bruins, I believe they were 1 point shy of Florida. And so home ice advantage, that definitely came into play. And, you talk about shootouts, you talk about OT and breakaways. A goalie is way more important than it was back then, especially even 10 years ago. Now with the 3v3 overtime and the only 5 minutes. So this deal not getting done is a major problem for the Bruins. Yeah, you got Korpisalo back, but he hasn't been great. He doesn't have great numbers, and he's not a guy that's been on a winning team before. So that's a major problem for the Bruins, and it's very concerning as a Bruins fan.
Yeah, and no, and I just want to go back a little bit. I want to backpedal a little bit more, Pat, just to kind of talk about from the Bruins management perspective, because this is where I think the mess up happened. This is what I will say too, just because you just touched on it. So I do want to kind of respond to what you say, because in a way, I disagree a little bit with the fact that if he's asking for more than 9 million, I'm not giving it to him. But there's a reason why. I'm going to say it now. So the reason why I wouldn't do that is because of the spot that management has put this team in. Now, if you backpedal, obviously, I want to go back all the way back to 2023 when we're setting records in the regular season. The trade deadline rolls around. Don Sweeney's dishing out draft picks left and right to get these rental players who all ended up actually fitting pretty well, but we didn't beat Florida. And I was hoping that at least a guy like Bertuzzi would resign. So what do? We trade one of our top playoff performers in Hall to make room for Bertuzzi, but then we let Bertuzzi walk, never mind to Toronto, who like we always face in the playoffs, like our rival almost. So that was a mess up there. So you traded all of our draft capital away for rentals that ended up not even playing a full season for us.
And Orlov as well.
Yeah, Orlov,
They got for him,
Bertuzzi,
but
Hathaway, all of those guys that we traded for, we traded picks away for a whole lot of nothing. Now you go into this season, okay, we can still kind of compete because we got Allmark, we have Swayman for this year, we play good. Okay, we're not as good, obviously. We lose guys like Bergeron and stuff. But the next part where the Bruins management completely screwed up is trading Allmark before they signed Swayman. I think everyone knows that because this is where the leverage comes into play. If you keep Allmark, your main priority should be sign the young goalie in Swayman. He's 25 years old. He has good numbers. Let's sign him now and say we can use Allmark for leverage. We can say, listen, we're going to give you this, but we're not going up to here because we have this. Okay, you're worth this, but you're not worth this. Okay, and that's how it should have been. They didn't do that. They traded Allmark away because obviously we're strapped with assets because we have no draft capital anymore. So Sweeney feels like he's going to dish Allmark out for draft capital, which we get a pick from Ottawa, but it's a shitty pick. Okay, to be honest, that trade sucked. That we traded away a former Vezina winner rather than Swayman for nothing really, and now we don't even have Swayman under contract yet, and now he has the leverage. Now this is where the leverage comes into play because now he has it. And he can say, well, now you don't have this, and I'm asking for this, and now it's your choice because I can walk and get this somewhere else and compete somewhere else, and you'll be strapped with Korpisalo, which Pat knows I hate him. I think he's awful. I don't think he's a starter at all. Okay, but I wouldn't mind him as a backup if we had Swayman. So yeah, in my opinion, Swayman is extremely, extremely important to sign because also in my opinion, I really don't think the Bruins got that much better. I think even with Lindholm and Zadorov, and you minus the losses that we took too, like depth wise, and obviously we don't have Allmark and maybe not Swayman now, I really don't think that we're going to be much better than what you saw and what we saw in the playoffs. And we didn't even look that good after we beat Toronto. Right now, I think it is kind of important for the Bruins. It's really important for the Bruins to sign Swayman, but it's also extremely important that we don't overpay for him because take a look at Torrey Krug. Okay, he also has the same agent as Swayman, by the way, and he came from Boston, went to St. Louis. We wouldn't give him 8.5 million, and look at he's out for the whole year, and St. Louis is cap strapped because of that contract. And I'm not saying that's going to happen with Swayman, but we haven't seen Swayman be the 1A goalie yet. And if we're going to give him all this money, he doesn't have the accolades right now to prove that. But yes, he is important to sign. The Bruins need him. We do need him to be competitive, but it doesn't mean that he's worth this much money at all because he just hasn't shown it yet. If he shows it, then yes, obviously. But
Agree with that too, saying he hasn't been the 1A. Clearly last year he got more starts than Allmark, and it seemed like more of a 60-40, I would say, as far as starts go. And I honestly was a big fan of the tandem thing. I think not only is it huge for rest with your goalies, but it's also huge for as matchups. All you have to do is take a look and see how this guy's performed against this team. How has this guy been on the road this year? That's all you have to do. And then you start one of them and you have trust in both goalies. But I think with Swayman, he expects to be in that starting role. And yes, I get not overpaying him, but then don't trade away Omar. Don't trade away the only guy that you can say, this guy will take your job if you don't perform. And we're not going to give you all that money because we are fine starting this guy. They really screwed themselves over. I don't understand what the thinking was at all. They had signing those free agents. It was like, okay, we got a little bit heavier. We got Zadorov. We got some help up front. We brought in the Max Joneses. We brought in a couple of fourth line guys that maybe can add some depth to this team and possibly get a power play that we haven't seen work in at least a year, maybe two. Ever since Bergeron was gone, the power play is a disaster. So that's definitely one of my priorities that we need to fix and we need to see much more of. But now you can't even think about power play and overtime and 5-on-5, whatever. You need to think about who's going to be starting in your net. And now, say Corpusalo, he goes out and gets hurt. Now you're really screwed. Now you're starting an AHL goalie against every single team that walks into the Garden knows it's going to be a dogfight, knows that, their backs are up against the wall. So you can't tell me that there isn't a player or a team that thinks it's going to be a cakewalk every single time they play the Boston Bruins. This has been a team that has constantly been in the playoffs, consistently had well coached team, and always, the energy in the Garden's very exciting. And Boston loves Swayman and he loves playing here, but you know what? I don't blame his agent for going out and saying, let's play ball and taking the reins here and saying, no, we're not gonna take a low ball estimate so it helps out you and your franchise, Cam Neely and Don Sweeney. You're gonna pay my guy because we know that your back's against the wall and you need him more than we need you. And it's simple as that, business terms.
right. And I just want to say one more thing that obviously I was just looking something up because this is what I wanted to touch on back at the beginning of the video. The only reason I'm saying we can't go more than, for me, it's more than 8.5, but especially 9, is we really only have
9 would be way too much.
we
Eight and
have
a half
just under
already a
we have
stretch.
7.8. That's what our cap space is right now. We have 7.8, so we're already going to be going over if we
We
pay.
also have Tyler Johnson on a PTO, who obviously,
Yeah,
you know,
there's so many things, and
that's a guy that could be on the power play too. I mean, there's plenty of
we're
options, plenty of guys that
already
can.
cap strapped. We're already cap strapped, and we're going to be cap strapped again. And listen, he could play so well if we give him the money, and maybe the contract is perfect, and he is the good goalie that he actually is, and that's perfect. But when you look at all the factors, it's a big risk because management wise, this steers the direction of the Bruins' future, the whole future. Because where are you going to put your money? You don't really have a lot of draft assets now. We don't have a lot of superstars that are going to rise up out of Providence. So we're in a really
You
tough
have no
spot.
prospects. You have no
That's what
prospects.
I'm saying. So we're already strapped in every future category. So if it's like we're built to win now, but we can't even win now. We can't even win now
And
because
the Bruins have never really been a team that has had problems with money. They don't go after, these huge free agents that are asking for this outlandish amount. And they tend to be smart with their money. Obviously, signing Pasternak is a guarantee. Bergeron and Marchand, they've both taken pay cuts, but really they haven't gone out spending crazy. They brought in Zaki. He's on a pretty solid contract. I think this just goes back to Zadorov and Lindholm, and I think they're biting their lip. Just, they probably paid him even a couple thousand too much. I mean, you're talking, we're at 7.8 right now. That puts us over the cap if we agree to the 8.5, and that's even if Swayman's team does agree to that. You sign these guys for a little bit less, or even, a year less. Like Zadorov, 5 years, Lindholm, 7 years. Like, what makes you want to sign those guys for the rest of their career? They haven't played in this conference. You really didn't know much about them.
I'm going to talk about this in a different video, but I just want to touch on it now. Is personally, Lindholm is not worth the money that we gave him. He's just
I agree.
not worth the money. I actually like Zadorov's.
If this is Elias Pettersson, okay, maybe I can understand it. But this is Elias Lindholm.
Listen,
the wrong alliance.
Lindholm was good for a really long time. The only way that this contract even pans out remotely is if he produces like that 1 year he had in his career in Calgary.
And the power play
goals when he put up 40 goals. And he needs to be a phenomenal two-way player like Bergeron was. That's the only way that this guy, that what we paid him can be well. Because for me, like, why are we paying him that much money when, like, I know he's not a third line guy, but Vancouver literally had him as their third line center this year and in the playoffs. He's not a third liner. I think he's a perfect second line guy. I think he's a perfect second line center on a Stanley Cup team. He's not a first line guy, in my opinion. Is it good that we got a guy like him that can produce offensively? Yes, but we paid way too much money for that because he's also creeping up there in age now. And is he really going to be getting that much better? Yes, he will produce 70, 80 points, but that's going to decrease every year. And that's 7 years on the books.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, he's thinking, all right, I got my contract, for the rest of my career. And then if I want to keep playing, I can get a 2 or a 1 year somewhere else or re-sign here. Why can't, and I like bringing him in, get a new face in here because clearly we need that and we need offensive production. But this guy isn't a lock for offensive production. This guy is like, he needs a new landing spot, a new place to find out, what type of player he's going to be. He's not a goal scorer. He's not just some unreal penalty killer, some guy that eats up minutes. Why can't Fabian Lysell be the guy that you bring into play on that second power play or on that second line? No, you have to bring a guy in and you have to overpay him, and now you're screwed with the goaltender situation. And by the way, they sent Fabian Lysell down to the AHL. So another draft pick that's gone to shit for the Bruins.
Like we said, it really goes back to management and how it's like a domino effect, like one thing after the other. You don't think it's that bad. And I'm not saying, because it made sense to be a buyer at the deadline in 23 because of like how good our team was and to strengthen our team. But like the fact that you couldn't retain any of those guys, and then like you dished out Hall thinking you were going to sign Bertuzzi, and then you let him walk to your rival. I've been saying this to like all of our friends and everyone I talk to, like the Bruins have been good because of the goalie tandem. So like now that this is like potentially both gone, like this is a really, really bad situation for the Bruins, considering who else is in the Atlantic Division and just in the Eastern Conference in general. I mean, their chances are like rapidly decreasing to make the playoffs.
And you can't tell me that other teams haven't looked at the Bruins' success, at least in the regular season, the past couple of years, and have seen the goalie tandem situation and then have brought that into their own organization, because that is definitely something that we have kept note on the past year or two, I'd say, the last couple of seasons, where other teams, even when you have an Igor Shesterkin or a Jake Ottinger, we've seen Wedgwood step in. We've seen these backup goalies get 25, 30 games under their belt, and it's not because of an injury to the starter. It's because they go on a little run. They have a little weak run, a little 4 or 5 game win streak. And then it's like, why not? All you're doing is resting your top guy and making sure that he's absolutely 100% when he goes out there when you need to win a game.
Backups have become very important. And honestly, for most cases, it hasn't even been, I wouldn't even say backup, because like you said,
it's 1A, 1B situation.
It's like the increase. Like I go back to the same year we did it in 23 when we were good. Like that was the year, like if you looked at a team like Minnesota, they had Fleury and Gustafsson flipping back and forth. And Gustafsson was like the projected backup to start the year, and he was in Vezina talks by the end of the year with Ullmark.
Look at what Vegas has done. Obviously, Logan Thompson was hurt, but they brought in, who's their goaltender right now?
Aiden Hill's the starter.
That's right. And you want to know why he's the starter?
Yeah.
He's a starter because of the playoff run that he had when Logan Thompson was injured. So obviously they kicked out Logan Thompson because he was a free agent. He's now with Washington, but they were just running through the motions. They had 3 or 4 goalies in a cycle in the Cup,
Hmm. Yeah, they also got Akira Schmid from New Jersey. I think he's going to be
who
the
also had some time last year in New
yeah.
Jersey,
So
played a few
so
games.
so yeah, the two goalie thing is big, and that's why I'm saying like I'm not a huge fan of Corpusalo, especially as a starter, but like as a backup, like I don't mind him as a backup because he has the experience under his belt. He's 30 years old. He's out of his prime or at the tail end of it, so he ain't getting better. That's the other thing. So I think he'd be perfect behind Swayman, to be fair. I think that would put the Bruins in a way better situation. But once again, like it doesn't look bright for the
Yeah,
Bruins.
and like obviously we weren't happy with the trade. You got cast like a first rounder that really didn't isn't going to do too
It
much for
doesn't.
you. You would
It's not going to
expect,
do.
and then you trade a Vesner winner, putting him on the table to trade automatically. You're getting eyeballs looking at that, and just to get Corpusalo, who's a mid goalie, who I don't even think was the starter for Ottawa. Um, or at least he came in because of an injury on a struggling Ottawa team. It doesn't look like we won that trade. I didn't think it could get worse from there. So at the end of the day, yeah, we're very distraught about this situation from the Bruins. This isn't a team that usually deals with this type of things. Holding out is not common in the NHL. Only a handful of players, I would say, have done that. Yeah, this is just something that we thought we had to talk about. Us being Bruins fans, most of our friends have brought the situation up to us, and we've seen it all over the internet. It's definitely a problem concerning Boston with the season right around the corner. It's not something you want to be dealing with. We're hoping the Bees and Swayman's party can figure it out because we're definitely going to need Jeremy Swayman in the net this year as the Bruins quest for a cup. So I hope you guys enjoyed this one. We're going to get more NHL content towards you. We're going to be going over the division shortly. So stay tuned for that, and we'll see you guys later.